I'm sure you'll know my colleagues, but I will introduce them. On my right, I've got Una Jagos, Solicitor General. On my left, Karen Chang, the Chief Executive of the Serious Fraud Office. You'll know Jeremy Lightfoot from Corrections, and of course, Commissioner Richard Chambers.
I'm going to be here challenging you every time you show up. That could get really, really repetitive. I appreciate that, but I'm here to play devil's advocate, not only for the Māori people, but for yourselves, to cut through to some decent solutions that turn into results, not in 10 years, in 3 years, in 5 years, dramatically in 10 years. So I want to ask a question about self-reflection. And I'm going to preface it by sharing with you an idea that a fellow called Moana Jackson consistently shared with us. And he always said to us, you've got to make sure you're asking the right question. And so when it comes to justice, it turns out that contemporary colonial societies right across the globe have this problem of a highly over-incarcerated Indigenous population. America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. Same outcome. So what level, degree, activities in terms of self-reflection do each of you three have going on in your organisations that might help inform what truly transformational practice might be going forward? Because as I sit here and listen to you, I'm just listening to churned out numbers, ideas. They're all outdated, by the way, and they've been going around in a circle for too long, far too long. So I'm challenging you to go harder with your thinking and to consider what are the self-reflection things that my agency needs to do, and why is it that contemporary colonial societies all over the globe overly incarcerate their Indigenous populations, and what am I doing about it? So any reflection, not looking for the answer, just this is a long convo and let's jump in.
Well, I think you can only talk in the capacity that you operate. So,
I mean, I can speak, certainly. You're spot on, actually, globally, and I've seen how other countries operate with the same challenge. First comment I'd make is I think we can be very proud of New Zealand. We're not there yet. We've got a long way to go. This is not a new problem. But actually, my observation is that the effort that many agencies, including my own, put into being better in this space is something that we actually can be proud of, although we have got a long way to go. For police, Tihiranga o Te Tai, you'll be very familiar with that. That's about our cultural competency, it's about our policy, it's about our partnerships. Right now, my organisation is going through a process of refreshing that. And I leverage, for instance, the partnerships that I have with Māori leaders around the country who provide advice to me on where those opportunities are. We have to continue to do that, because otherwise you're absolutely right. We just get more of the same. So it's something that, you know, throughout my career of 30 years, it's something we've worked hard at, and I think we are making small steps. We all wish we could make big steps, but the conversations are happening.
Right.
I think my self-reflection is to say that we, you know, I very openly lead in my organisation with the view that we don't have all the answers and that we need to talk to others about that. So in the production of the long process by which we came to the new prosecution guidelines, we dealt with a whole range of people, frontline, on the ground, victim support, actual victims, to try and understand what we needed to know. It's not really relevant to this particular forum, but same about our experience of the Royal Commission into Abuse and State Care. What is the reflection back that we need to have about how the systems that we have run and perhaps think are the answer, because we are that way wired, having studied and become lawyers, that we now, what is it about the system that is generating some of these painful results? So we have to hear from others.
do you have another question, Mr. Ferris? Have you got another question?
Oh, let me just see how these two go. I know it needs to move on. Yep.
I think you start with needing knowledge, and you need to build on that with understanding, and then you need to be in a position where you can act. Knowledge, you can do some quite tangible, real things. So we have a research program that helps us understand what's really going on in the numbers. There is opportunity to go out, reach out, engage with others, know that, as Una says, you don't have all of the answers. Understanding is about challenging your organisation, your policies, and understanding how that all fits. And so we actively do that. It's something that we quite deliberately try and bring to the table when we're having these conversations internally. And then in terms of what you do, there are things that are within our gift as CEs. My gift as a CE, there are things we reflect in our advice to ministers. But I would agree with colleagues that have spoken, and I'm sure those still to speak will say that this is a journey, and we're only partway along.
Yep. Sorry, I'm jumping.
We're finished with Karen.
Yeah, I think I'd come back to the word trust probably first, and I think there is some way to go still to build a level of trust with some in the community, particularly in a corrections context. That was clearly illustrated through Te Maitarangi, the Waitangi Tribunal in 2017. Our response to that was in part to listen, to expose ourselves to some pretty unpleasant reflections back on our organisation, and to be willing to listen, to be willing to change, and to introduce language such as healing, humanising into our language that we hadn't incorporated before. So I think there are some really important foundational steps to get to a point where an organisation can at least acknowledge that there are some things it needs to shift in the way in which it's perceived, and the way in which it's acting, and the way in which its culture drives a particular response. Once you've started to lay those foundations, you've then got to endure, not by doing something off to the side or separate or different, but by ensuring that you are turning up every day, consistently, predictably and transparently, acting in a way that will build that trust on the foundations of what you've heard. That's been our mission, and it is a long-term mission. I can't guarantee in 3 years' time I'm not going to be sitting opposite you, being challenged in exactly the same way in terms of the data and the metrics and the kind of what the numbers tell us both. But what I hope I'll be able to say is that through the more qualitative assessment of whether we're driving a degree more trust and confidence in the way in which we're acting and the way in which we are humanising that environment to enable people to connect in a more positive way as they leave our care and go back into communities, then I think that's a starting point for seeing the data, the more quantitative evidence show up in that longer term. That's my response.
Okay, just lastly, so I haven't really interrogated the depth or robustness of the Māori thinking available to you, but it's not lost on me that I'm here talking to 3 non-Māori CEs with huge advisory groups who show up who are mostly not Māori, and we're trying to deal with this 50% plus Māori problem. But we have to get to interrogating that capacity at some point, so we'll move there. But my question to you now is, are you happy with the depth, the robustness, the independence of thought available to you in your Māori senior teams? Do you think you have what it takes in them to move towards where I'm talking about?
Yes, speaking from my agency's perspective, I think we've invested a lot, and we have maintained at the senior executive and below a level of depth of knowledge and connection back into community that gives us a level of confidence. I think the important point, though, is to note that we as an agency do not and should never think we've got all the answers. So for us to somehow shield ourselves from the important connection back into community is the important message that I need to keep ensuring we remind ourselves of. Hence why we are so much more focused on creating that relationship at the local level and make sure that general managers in those community partnerships and pathways roles are our point of direct connection to what our mission is. So I don't want to limit us to creating expertise internally. I want to make sure that we are part of communities in those locations that enable their voices to be heard in the work that we do every day.
Takuta Ferris asks, why are there so many Māori in New Zealand jails? Incarceration Facts. As IQ reduces, the risk of violence increases. As IQ reduces, the risk of criminal behaviour increases. The vast majority of inmates have low to below average IQ. Suggested solution. Separate the inmates into prison groups based on their IQ and develop suitable counselling, training and rehabilitation programs for each of the IQ groups in readiness for release back into society. Benefits of incarceration for the low IQ: free housing, free GP visits, free dental treatment, free counselling, training and rehabilitation programs, increased productivity and happiness for the victims and society at large. Thank you for listening. WhangāreiTim.